The city was drowning in rain that afternoon. It wasn't just the kind that kissed the glass, it roared, slashed, and sobbed against every surface like the sky itself had broken into tears. People hurried across the crosswalks, umbrellas bent by the wind, cars hissing through puddles. But amidst that chaos stood a small figure barefoot, soaked, trembling. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, clutching a torn teddy bear as if it were the only thing holding her together. Ethan Cole, CEO of one of the city's largest construction firms, had just stepped out of his black Bentley. His assistant rushed beside him, umbrella hovering like a halo. Ethan's world was built on order meetings timed to the second, contracts precise to the letter. But in that one glance, all of it stopped. The little girl stood frozen at the edge of the crossing, tears blending with rain, her lips trembling. Traffic lights flickered red to green, and a blur of headlights surged forward. She stepped onto the road. "Hey!" Ethan shouted before he realized he had moved. The horn blared, tires screeched, and in a heartbeat, he was there, arms around the child, pulling her back to the curb just as a delivery truck roared past, missing them by inches. The world seemed to hold its breath for a second. All he heard was the rain hammering the pavement and the tiny sobs against his chest. She was shaking uncontrollably, eyes wide with terror, teddy bear squashed between them. Ethan knelt down, trying to meet her gaze. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice gentler than even he expected. She didn't answer. She just stared at him, those big brown eyes glassy with tears and fear. A few passers-by murmured admiration. That man saved her. But Ethan barely noticed. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her tiny shoulders. "Where are your parents?" he asked. The question made her flinch. Her lower lip quivered before she whispered, I don't have one." His chest tightened. He had no idea why those 5 words hit him so hard. Maybe it was the way she said one instead of parents, as if father was the only word that mattered. "Then who's looking after you?" he asked gently. The girl hesitated, gripping her teddy tighter. I live with Aunt May, but she said she doesn't want me anymore." Before he could respond, she looked up at him with sudden desperate eyes. "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy? Just for one day?" The words sliced through the storm like lightning. Ethan froze, completely unprepared for the innocence and pain behind that request. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, someone called out from across the street, a shrill, angry voice cutting through the rain. "Lila, what do you think you're doing, you useless child?" The girl gasped and hid behind him, trembling. Ethan turned toward the voice, jaw tightening as he saw a woman marching toward them, umbrellas snapping in the wind. Fury etched across her face, and in that single moment, Ethan realized this wasn't going to be just an act of kindness. It was the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. Ethan Cole had built his empire on control. In the boardroom, his voice was law, his presence commanded silence, and his decisions were never questioned. People called him the Iron CEO, disciplined, detached, efficient. He had mastered the art of keeping emotions locked behind glass walls. But now, as he sat inside his car, trench coat across the seat, a trembling little girl clutching a teddy bear beside him, those walls felt cracked. Lila sat quietly, her tiny hands twisting the bear's ear, eyes darting nervously between Ethan and the window. Rain still drummed against the car, but the storm outside felt mild compared to the one swirling in Ethan's mind. "Where's your home, Lila?" he asked, voice low. She hesitated, then mumbled, "Near the market. Aunt May's house, but I don't think I can go back." Ethan's driver, startled by the sight of a child in the CEO's car, kept glancing at the rearview mirror. "Sir, should I drive?" Ethan ordered curtly. "We'll drop her safely." As the car glided through the wet streets, Ethan couldn't stop glancing at her. Her clothes were soaked, her lips pale, yet she sat upright, trying hard to hide her fear. That kind of quiet strength, he'd seen it before, long ago. His chest tightened as a forgotten memory flickered. A hospital corridor, a younger version of himself standing beside a bed, holding his mother's fragile hand. Her last words to him still echoed faintly, "Be kind, Ethan." Even when it hurts, he blinked the thought away. He had buried that softness years ago, when kindness became a weakness in business and emotions a liability. Yet here was this little stranger, breaking into the very space he'd guarded most. The car stopped in front of a cramped neighborhood, faded paint, flickering streetlights, a sense of neglect hanging in the air. Lila looked out and her face drained of color. A woman stood outside a small house, arms crossed, glaring. "So that's Aunt May?" Ethan muttered. Double quotes, "Yes," Lila whispered, shrinking in her seat. "Please don't be mad at her. She just doesn't like when I talk to people." The woman stormed up as Ethan stepped out with Lila. "Who are you?" she demanded. "And why is this brat with you?" Ethan's tone turned sharp. "She almost got hit by a truck. If I hadn't been there..." "Oh, she probably ran off again," Aunt May interrupted with a scoff. "Always causing trouble. I told her she's lucky I keep her at all. Her father left, her mother's gone, and now she thinks she can beg strangers for attention." Lila's head dropped. Ethan felt something inside him twist painfully. "She's a child," he said coldly. "You could show a bit of care." "Care?" Aunt May laughed bitterly. "You want her? Take her. She's nothing but a burden." The words sliced through the air. Lila flinched, and Ethan's fists clenched. Every instinct told him to walk away, to leave this chaos, and return to his tidy, emotionless world. But as he looked down at the little girl trembling beside him, clutching his coat sleeve like it was her lifeline, he knew he couldn't. He turned to Aunt May, voice steady but icy. "Maybe I will take her. Just for one day." Aunt May sneered. "Go ahead. Let's see how long your charity lasts." Lila's wide eyes lifted toward him, half fear, half fragile hope. Ethan didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, he nodded. "Come on, Lila. You're safe with me." And as the car pulled away from that broken home, neither of them realized that one day together was about to change everything forever. Ethan's mansion stood on the edge of the city, a modern fortress of glass and steel, perched high above the world. The kind of place where silence had a sound of its own. Every corner gleamed, every clock ticked in order, and not a single thing was out of place. But that evening, when the car pulled into the long driveway, it was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. A child had never stepped into this house before. Lila's small feet hesitated on the marble floor. Her soaked shoes squeaked faintly, and she immediately bent down, trying to wipe them clean with her sleeve. "Sorry, sir," she whispered. "I don't want to make your floor dirty." Ethan stared at her for a moment, speechless. He had dealt with arrogant investors, stubborn contractors, and ruthless competitors, but never a child apologizing for being wet. "It's fine," he said gruffly, handing his umbrella to the maid. "Maria, get her something warm to wear, and something to eat." Maria, the housekeeper who'd worked for Ethan since his early days, raised her brows slightly but obeyed. Soon Lila was sitting by the fireplace, wrapped in one of Ethan's oversized sweaters, eating soup with trembling hands. The warmth brought a little color back to her cheeks. Ethan stood at a distance, arms crossed, pretending to be busy checking emails, but his eyes kept drifting to her. When Maria finally left the room, Lila looked up timidly. "Sir, this house is so quiet." "It's how I like it," Ethan replied without thinking. She tilted her head. "Don't you get lonely?" The question hit him like a dart. Loneliness, he'd buried that word under success, power, and endless work hours. No, he said flatly. I don't have time for that. Oh, Lila nodded softly, staring into her soup. My mommy used to say people who say they're not lonely are usually the loneliest. Ethan looked at her sharply. There was no judgment in her tone, just innocent truth. He turned away, pretending to adjust the curtains. You should rest, he muttered. You'll stay in the guest room for tonight, tomorrow. We'll figure out what to do next. But as night deepened, he found himself restless. The soft patter of rain outside seemed to echo through the halls. He wandered toward the guest wing and peeked in. Lila was asleep, curled up beneath the blanket, her teddy bear tucked under her chin. For a moment, Ethan simply watched her peaceful, fragile, completely out of place in his world of steel and solitude. Something stirred in his chest again, something unfamiliar and uninvited. He turned to leave, but her small voice stopped him. Sir, she murmured, half awake. Thank you for saving me today. Ethan froze in the doorway. Go to sleep, Lila, he said quietly. Good night. Daddy, she whispered before drifting back into dreams. The word hit him like thunder. Daddy. He hadn't been called that, not even in imagination. He stood there for a long time, staring into the dim room. His heart unsteady for the first time in years. He didn't know it yet. But that single word had cracked something deep within him, something that would never be the same again. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, painting soft golden lines across the mansion's pristine floors. Ethan rarely noticed the light. Most days he was already buried in spreadsheets before dawn. But that morning was different. The faint sound of laughter, a soft, awkward giggle echoing from the kitchen broke. Through the silence that had ruled his home for years, he followed the sound and paused at the doorway. There was Lila, standing on her tiptoes, trying to pour milk into a glass that was far too big for her small hands. Maria stood beside her, half amused, half nervous, whispering, Careful, little one, Mr. Colt doesn't like messes. Lila smiled, her eyes bright. It's okay. I'll clean up if I spill. Ethan watched, unseen, as a tiny drop of milk escaped the jug and tripped onto the counter. Instead of scolding, Maria handed her a napkin. You remind me of someone, sweetheart, she said softly. Lila's curiosity flickered. Who? Maria hesitated. Someone who used to smile a lot? Before this house forgot how. Ethan stepped in just then, and both froze. What's going on here? He asked, tone calm but heavy with authority. Lila's shoulders stiffened. I was making breakfast for you, sir. To say thank you? He glanced at the small plate she'd set slightly burnt toast, uneven butter, and a wobbly glass of milk. Something so simple, yet so human. He should have felt nothing. But the lump in his throat said otherwise. You didn't have to, he murmured. I wanted to, she said shyly. Because yesterday you were my hero. He turned away quickly, pretending to adjust his tie. Eat your breakfast, Lila. The day carried on, but Ethan's concentration was fractured. In meetings, he caught himself thinking about whether Lila had eaten lunch. During calls, he remembered her asking why people pretend not to be lonely. It frustrated him how easily she had occupied the silence he once wore like armor. That evening, when he returned home, he found her sitting by the window, sketching something on a piece of paper. She looked up, smiling. I drew you. Ethan frowned slightly but stepped closer. The drawing was crude but full of heart. Him in a suit, holding hands with a little girl under an umbrella. Above them she'd written, My daddy for a day. He felt something twist deep inside. You shouldn't call me that, he said softly. I'm not your father. Her smile faded, though she tried to hide it. I know, I just wish I had one like you. Ethan didn't respond. Instead, He walked out to the balcony, staring at the skyline as the evening lights shimmered across the city. For the first time, success felt strangely hollow. Behind him, he could hear Lila's faint humming a lullaby, perhaps something her real mother once sang. It filled the mansion with a warmth he'd long forgotten existed. And even as he stood there, denying it, a faint, unintentional smile tugged at his lips. But just as peace began to settle, his phone buzzed a message flashing on the screen from his company's board. Urgent. Media scandal involving orphanage project. Need immediate statement. The calm shattered. Ethan's world of order and business was about to collide with the fragile heart that had just begun to heal. The next morning, chaos replaced calm. Ethan's phone hadn't stopped buzzing since dawn. His company, Cole Enterprises, was at the center of a breaking news storm. Headlines flashed across every screen. CEO accused of exploiting orphanage land for profit. Reporters camped outside the gates, their cameras pointed toward the mansion like vultures circling their prey. Ethan sat in his study, his hands steepled under his chin, jaw locked. His assistant's voice trembled through the speakerphone. Sir, social media's tearing into you. They're saying you demolished housing that belonged to an orphanage trust. That land was purchased legally, Ethan said sharply, but even he could hear the exhaustion behind his tone. Release the documents? Clarify the record? We did, sir, the assistant replied. But people don't care about proof anymore. They care about feelings. That last word hit him harder than expected. Feelings. For years, he had treated emotions as noise, something to be tuned out in the pursuit of order. But this was a storm no contract could silence. Then came a soft knock. Ethan looked up. Lila stood in the doorway, clutching her teddy bear, eyes wide with worry. Sir, are you in trouble? He sighed, forcing a weary smile. Nothing for you to worry about, Lila. But I heard the people outside yelling your name, she said, stepping closer. They were calling you bad. Her innocent voice cracked something in him. Sometimes people believe what they see, not what's true, he said quietly. She frowned, thinking hard. Then maybe they just need to see the truth. Like when I thought Aunt May didn't love me, but I saw her crying one night. She did. She just didn't know how to show it. Ethan's lips parted, but no words came. The child who had nothing, no power, no wealth, was teaching him more about grace than anyone ever had. Before he could respond, Maria rushed in, pale and anxious. Sir, there are reporters at the gate. They're asking about the little girl. They think you're hiding something. What? Ethan snapped. He turned to the window. Flashes of cameras were already visible near the gate. A pit formed in his stomach. She can't be dragged into this. Lila tugged his sleeve softly. It's okay. I can tell them you're a good person. You saved me. The thought of her standing before the world, fragile, small, defending him, made his chest ache. No, Lila, you don't owe me anything. But you said sometimes people believe what they see, she whispered. Then let them see me with you. Her words echoed long after she left the room. Ethan paced by the window, the cameras flashing like lightning against his reflection. He realized that for the first time in his life, he wasn't worried about his reputation, he was worried about her. When night fell, he made a decision that would shift everything. He would face the world, not as a CEO defending his empire, but as a man protecting the one person who had given it all meaning. And as he prepared for the press conference, he saw Lila waiting by the door, her tiny hand holding a drawing of him under that same umbrella. She smiled nervously. I'll stand with you, Daddy. Ethan looked down at her, heart trembling. Then let's show them who we really are. The next morning, the city buzzed with anticipation. Every major news channel was broadcasting live from the front gates of Cole Enterprises. Reporters jostled for position, microphones waving, lenses glinting in the sun. Ethan stood behind the heavy glass doors of his headquarters, staring out at the sea of flashing cameras. For a man used to commanding attention, this moment felt different. This wasn't about control, but courage. He adjusted his tie, but his hands hesitated. Beside him stood Lila, dressed neatly in a small floral dress Maria had found in storage. She looked up at him with a nervous smile. "Don't be scared," she whispered. "You're brave. You saved me." Ethan's throat tightened. The irony wasn't lost on him. A little girl who had every reason to fear the world was the one giving him strength. "Stay close to me," he murmured when the doors opened. The noise was deafening. Questions flew like arrows. "Mr. Cole, did you steal orphanage land? Who is the child with you? Are you hiding something from the public?" Ethan stepped to the podium, shielding Lila slightly behind him. For a long moment, he said nothing. The murmurs grew louder, tension thickening in the air. Then he spoke, his voice steady, deep, and sincere. "I've built my company with integrity," he began, "and every piece of land we've touched has been acquired lawfully. But today, I'm not here to talk about business. I'm here because of her." He turned, gesturing to Lila. The camera zoomed in instantly. She blinked against the light, gripping his hand tightly. This little girl, Ethan continued, was about to lose her life on a rainy street 2 days ago. "I happened to be there, and in saving her, I learned something. I learned that no amount of power or wealth matters when you've forgotten what it means to care. When I found her, she had no one. And she asked me a question that broke me. She said, 'Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy? Just for one day?'" A wave of murmurs swept through the crowd. Ethan's gaze softened as he looked down at her. "I didn't realize then how much one day could change a man." She reminded me that we don't need to share blood to share love, and we don't need to be related to be family. Lila tugged on his sleeve, and he bent down as she whispered something. Then, to everyone's shock, she stepped forward, her tiny voice quivering but clear. "Mr. Ethan didn't steal anything. He's a good man. He helped me when nobody else would." There was silence, pure, heavy, breathless silence. Cameras froze mid-click. Ethan stood still, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. That moment, caught by every lens, went viral across the nation. Headlines began to shift from accusation to admiration. Social feeds flooded with messages. Maybe this world needs more men like him. Later that evening, as the lights dimmed and the reporters dispersed, Ethan walked Lila back into the building. She looked up at him sleepily. "Did they believe you now?" He smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think they believed you." But as peace settled over him for the first time in years, a quiet thought haunted his heart. What happens when her one day with him is over? Days passed, and the storm that had nearly destroyed Ethan's reputation began to fade into something unexpected admiration. News outlets now called him the CEO with a heart. The photo of him standing beside Lila, her tiny hand holding his as she spoke before the cameras, had spread across the world like wildfire. People saw not a corporate giant, but a man who had found his humanity again. Yet within the walls of his home, a quieter, more painful storm was brewing. It was late evening when Ethan came home to find Lila sitting on the stairs, her teddy bear hugged close to her chest. She looked smaller than usual, as if something heavy pressed against her heart. "Lila?" he asked gently, setting down his briefcase. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Aunt May came today." Ethan's breath caught. "What?" "She said she wants me back," Lila murmured, eyes glistening. "She said the reporters were at her house too. People are giving her money now, and she says I belong to her again." Ethan felt something cold and sharp pierce through him. He had known this day would come, the day the world would try to reclaim what his heart had already claimed first. "And what do you want, Lila?" he asked softly. She looked up, eyes trembling. "I want to stay here." "With you?" Those words, so simple and so pure, shattered his composure. He knelt down, placing his hands on her small shoulders. Lila, I want that too. More than anything. But I can't just take you away. There are laws, and I don't care about laws. She cried suddenly, her tears spilling freely now. I just want a daddy who loves me, not someone who yells, or throws my things, or tells me I'm a mistake. Her sobs echoed through the empty mansion like a prayer breaking heaven's silence. Ethan pulled her close, holding her tightly. You're not a mistake, he whispered fiercely. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by her bedside, watching her breathe softly, her small fingers still clutching his. For the first time in decades, he prayed quietly, brokenly, that somehow he could keep her safe. The next morning, he made a call to his lawyers, to the orphanage, to child services. It took weeks of paperwork, hearings, and endless questions, but he faced it all with one unshakable purpose, to make her officially his daughter. And one bright afternoon, in a modest courthouse room filled with sunlight, the judge smiled and stamped the final paper. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. You are now her legal guardian. Lila's eyes widened in disbelief. Ethan knelt before her, tears glistening in his usually composed eyes. It's real now, he said, voice trembling. You don't need to ask me to pretend anymore. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Then she threw her arms around his neck, laughing and crying all at once. Thank you, Daddy, for choosing me. He held her tightly, whispering against her hair, No, Lila, thank you for reminding me what love really means. Outside the courthouse, photographers waited again, but this time, there were no harsh questions, no shouts, no chaos. Just applause. Just the story of a man who had once been lost in the emptiness of success, and a little girl who filled his world with meaning. Ethan looked down at her, her hand small but sure in his. Ready to go home? He asked. She nodded, smiling up at him. Our home. And as they walked toward the waiting car hand in hand, hearts full, the city skyline shimmered before them. The same one that had once been cold and distant. But now, under its light, a man who had forgotten how to love and a child who had forgotten how to be loved finally found what both had. The missing family moral. Sometimes the family we build by choice becomes stronger than the one we're born into, and love, when it's given freely, can rewrite even the coldest stories into something eternal.